Welcome to the Tiny Box Dialogues. This series was created to share the knowledge of our experts using real examples from real people with real stories. In this episode of the Dialogues, we are discussing Google Design Sprints and how you can inspire innovation as well as take an idea to tested prototype within 5 days. Now, who's making this promise that you can do this in 5 days? Today, we're speaking to Maika Miller, who brings with her over 25 years of entrepreneurship experience. Today, she helps companies innovate, transform, reinvent, and crucially, get ideas off the ground and into practice. She's a visionary serial founder who is passionate about unleashing potential with innovative approaches and transformative technology. So Maika, welcome. And I'd love for you to share with our audience a little of your backstory and your passion, please.
Thank you so much for this very, very warm and positive intro. So I feel very good now. Yeah, so I think my passion for these, let's call it unusual approaches comes it goes back to the fact that I'm the daughter of a banker on the one hand side and of a hippie mom on the other. So what they both have is an entrepreneurial approach to whatever they did. And I'm trying to combining both. So I love to go beyond what's so-called the status quo. And this is why I'm so curious about any method that helps us as companies, as entrepreneurs, but also as societies to go beyond what we usually think is possible. I call it sometimes corporate mindfucks that we have in our minds. It's really helpful to see there are other ways to solve problems.
I mean, I could just dive into the fact that you've got a hippie mom and a banker dad, and how did that come about? But fantastic that it did. Miracles upon miracles.
They separated quite early on, so.
Okay, that was not where I was hoping it would go. Okay, so back to Google Design Sprints. I want to dive in because you've got so much content to share. But for the audience that isn't familiar with design thinking, I'm just going to do a quick intro on what a design sprint is, based on my knowledge, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. A design sprint is a time-constrained 5-phase process that uses design thinking. The aim is to reduce risk when bringing a new product, service, or feature to market. Now, in these 5 days, the team as a whole will answer the critical business questions through design, prototyping, testing, which you're going to be speaking about, Maika. And we're going to discuss the benefits, the challenges, and how you can implement that tool today, and maybe even some quick wins that you can take away. So Maika, where did you first come across this Google Design Sprint, and what encouraged you to add it to your toolkit and train in it?
So the very first time I came across the Google Design Sprint was when I was working with an agency, a web developer agency for my own company in 2013. Mm-hmm. And they referred me to Google Ventures and their website and a blog posts by Jake Knapp, one of the inventors or drivers of the Google Design Sprint, and I was fascinated. So as I've been always doing, on the one hand side, my own companies, and also on the other hand side, driving innovation in established companies and also supporting other startups, I was eager to see, does it go beyond prototyping a software product? And I found, wow, that serves for strategic questions as well as it does serve for the question, how do we frame, design, and shape a product? So, and ever since, I was triggered by that. And then in 2016, where I did interim management in a very old company founded in 1929, 1,000 employees, very old-fashioned way run. I was responsible for getting innovation on new products and services off the ground. And I asked one of the teams I was responsible for, I said, I see a potential here. Are you willing to try something completely different from what you usually know, how you do, how you come up with new things? And they said, you know what, Maike, everything that is more interesting and seems to be somehow faster as what we do, in brackets, everything seems to be faster than what we do, we are willing to try. Yeah, and that was the first encounter beyond the startup world for me. Amazing. Really applying it to a classic organization.
The fact that we buy in is amazing.
Yeah, it was. So I'm still thankful for the openness they had. And to move it fast forward, the product launched based on this design sprint. We found out that the idea has potential, and the product launched 6 months after. Amazing. Which was unseen in that company. So usually it was 2 to 3 years. So
bravo, what a great success story. I think what's interesting about that is the fact that you took something that was developed for designing tech and used it in a different way. And part of that might be that, from my understanding, it uses different elements like business strategy, innovation, behavioral science, design thinking, and more. And one phrase that you've used that I think is absolutely brilliant is you always call it the Swiss Army knife for digital transformation. Is that why you think it works for increasing innovation? Because it takes all of these different skills and puts them together?
Yeah. Let me dive into how it was invented. So Google Ventures, Jay Knopp and his team, and Jay Knopp published the book, the how-to book, in 2016. It's called the Sprint Book, but more to that later. What they did, they tried out different methods to find out early on if the ventures, the startups they had invested in, are on the right track. So they experimented with this cocktail. So the Google Design Sprint is a cocktail actually of the design methods. It's a design thinking methods. It also has the agile Scrum Sprint stuff in it, and additionally the lean startup idea or the lean approach, so testing early. And they mixed and matched and tried it out. Is it 10 days? Is it 30 days? Is it 5 days? And they came up with these 5 days. And what it makes it so intriguing and successful is that it already starts. One of the facts is that it already starts with the end in mind. So the first question you start the whole sprint with on a, let's say, Monday morning, day one, is what is the goal in 2 to 3 years in the best of all worlds? And that's even starting with the end in mind, instead of trying to jump into solutions right away, which is the typical decision culture that we have, makes a difference. And then now jumping to the end, there's a big difference between innovation and invention, and especially tech-driven Mittelstand companies tend to say, this is all we can do. But the question is that everything the user or client or customer wants? So the Google Design Sprint takes all your assumptions that are in the group, in the team. By the way, you should have in the team, but we come to that later, I suppose, everyone who will be somehow involved with that. Is that if you have these, if you get this together, and the cookbook sprint, the sprint methodology leads you to a perfect facade which then can be very early on after 5 days and not after two years, be tested, these hypotheses, with your potential client. And that makes it so intriguing because you know right away, okay, am I on the right track? Is this and that feature, might that serve? But for strategic questions, it's so beneficial because, you know, does it make sense to invest a lot of manpower and other resources into that project?
That's bang on. I mean, the fact is that it's not just about the fact that you'd have a product or a strategy developed in 5 days, is that it's not 2 years. The amount of money you're saving from manpower alone is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you have to do, is that you have to say to 5 to 7 people, okay, you're free for a week and just concentrate on the Google Design Sprint and nothing else. Yeah, but at the same time, this week has a transformative character because you achieve this in such a short time because the way you work together is completely different than we usually tend to work together.
Yeah. You do talk about 4 different elements of how this is beneficial to work together. I think including the fact that it's fast and cheap, etc. Would you mind covering those 4 points for us?
Yeah, sure. So one is it's experiment. Yeah, you get into the experiment mindset. And the bigger the question is, the more I recommend to do a Google Design Sprint.
Which is the reverse of what people would think. They think 5 days, it should be a small goal, but you're actually saying the goal, the better.
Exactly. And as we just said, it's fast and comparably cheap to what you usually do when it comes to new business models, new markets. It's customer focused, as I said, and that's kind of the icing on the cake. It's a cultural boost. When you're talking about agility, it usually doesn't make, from my experience, no sense to talk about it, neither to put it on PowerPoints, as I love to say, no power and no point. This is new work and agility in action because it's time boxed, it's focused, it works on Pareto efficiency, where I usually say you have to die a bit in these days because you have to say, no, that might be nice, but we focus. It's really instant, constant focus. And this is why you end up with the facade, with a prototype that can be tested.
Very cool. You know, one of the questions that I get when I first mentioned the Google Design Sprints was, does it matter if it's a corporate or a startup? Because there's this conception or this perception that you can only do this in a startup because it's fast moving, etc. But you've already given an example of that it works in corporate. Do you think it works better in one or the other, or is it irrelevant?
I think it's irrelevant. It depends a bit on the attitude and the mindset of the people, sure. But I mean, a prerequisite is that they want to do it. And then usually,
funny, that seems obvious, but actually,
but if you're forced into a Google Design Sprint, but I never had anyone who was really forced into a Google Design Sprint, so
they were probably thankful that you were bringing a new tool along and that would work faster and better.
Exactly. At least there's curiosity, because at least anyone is interested in to see or to be part of something that's new. And especially when it comes with the idea that there's something at the end that will be out of it. So you will always be a little bit smarter, though it might not work as you expected, but that's not relevant, because relevant is what the customer or the client, the user.
Do you have some examples that would seem unusual where it's worked?
So we had some, I'm very happy and lucky to have a whole range of topics. So I talked about in the first company, in the first established company that I was working for, there it was about to come up with a German signage solution.
Okay.
which is software related. So that's kind of close and obvious. Another thing was there was a big company that has that produced, how you say that in English, they do like paint lines. I think that's paint lines for cars.
Oh, like for driving?
No, for car manufacturers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that you get either a red, a blue, or a whatever color car.
Okay.
And what I didn't know that these machines are almost buildings. They are so big. And
just for the color.
As you find very often in Germany, there are very specialized companies here in Germany, and they sell all over the world, also to Australia. And if there's a problem with the machine, the machine stops until someone here jumps onto the plane and flies out to Australia. Yes, exactly. So the question was, how can we figure out a better maintenance or even predictive maintenance solution, probably with the aim of AR.
Augmented reality.
Augmented reality, exactly. And that was at the end of this 5 days, we really came up with a tangible solution that was tested with customers, and that was designed to go on. I mean, to manage expectations. You have a perfect facade. You don't have the house behind it.
Yeah.
But you know that it makes sense to iterate from there. And what I did in the company I talked about initially, as I was head of that process, was we went from this design sprint to a next design sprint, and before we really got into coding anything. So then we went into MVP status, and on and on and on. So it's a good kickoff.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for sharing such great examples. I have to ask the question, but have you ever had a situation where it didn't work? Because
no,
it's fun to talk about benefits, but
even my most fun and for me had the project that had the most insights was the question how to cover the business of how can I say, to be politically correct? It's about the horizontal business, so prostitutes. Because
did you say horizontal business? That's a very politically correct way to put it. Fantastic. Okay, continue.
So there was newsletter. How can I say, a newspaper publisher, not newsletter, newspaper publisher who used to earn a lot of money in former times by those sneaky advertisements that prostitutes put in the newspaper. And as we all know, that changed a lot. So you had to go to online and to platforms. But the platforms were owned by completely different people. So they thought, given their existing client base, how can they get back this kind of clientele? And I interviewed at the end, the testers were the prostitutes and also their pimps sometimes. So I got some insights into how the business works. There's a lot of potential to change things there.
How unusual.
But that was, and even there it worked.
Well, but I mean, that's a great example. Look, in any circumstance that you could possibly imagine, it works. Okay, so we have about 8 to 9 minutes to cover the actual 5-day process, and I really want that to be the thing that people take away. So why don't we dig in now? So why don't we start with the first steps what can an audience do? Actually, we're not going to go to the days yet. I just want to talk about the setup still.
Yeah.
What are the first steps that our audience can do to ensure success? Like, what's the first thing before you even get into the 5 days that you need to do?
Okay. Yeah. As you said, only 5 days doesn't mean it should be a safe bet. So I encourage to choose a big challenge, because the idea is to find out in a general way if you're on the right track. And it's not about that the prototype you create is so good that you keep it on going. It might be that this prototype you throw away. This is what we did in that company. It was only to see, are we on the right track, and how do we go from there? You need a decider in the team. So there should be one decider who's head of the project. Sure, a facilitator. Does it have to be a trained one? It should be someone who knows the book. Luckily, the Sprint book came out in 2016, which is really a recipe book on how to do it. There's also a good app. And I suppose we can put it in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it helps to moderate and to lead meetings and synthesizing thoughts.
Okay, great.
It's doable. Yeah, you need to recruit the Sprint team, and that should cover anyone who has somehow, when it goes into life afterwards, or would go, covers a significant part of
all these really relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, and mixed. So classically sales, R&D. So from really, don't do it internally. Yeah. You can take parts of it out of it to run better meetings. So it's a learning anyhow to read the book, but don't just stay in your crowd.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in order to get some expertise in, schedule some experts, because when we go to day one, this is all about covering what's relevant the first day. So you need experts. You need to block 5 days.
That's already a challenge. I can just hear people in the audience going, 5 days just on this.
What's always highly underestimated, how much time it costs these. A step towards, then you stop, and again. It's so much better to do it concisely in 5 days. So yeah, and you need a room with at least 2 whiteboards, a lot of sticky notes. So, but that's precisely.
No distractions, because I mean, we've all got phones on the table half the time. So
that's now. During that, it's so beneficial to put everything like a phone away.
Okay.
That it's a game changer. This
Excellent.
is the most important thing. Yeah, and you usually just do it from 10 to 5, and in the pauses and before and afterwards, you can do daily business if you want, but not in between. It's crucial for success to really focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just for the audience, we will be sharing some of the resources. There's some articles that Micah has written, and there's the Bible app on Google Design Sprint. So we'll share that below the YouTube videos. So let's dig into the 5 days. We've got 5 minutes, and you once told me you could explain it in 3 minutes. So let's see what you can do. You promised our leaders, I dare to test our audience. I dare to test a prototype in 5 days. So day one, hit me.
On Monday, you start with the end in mind. What's your goal? You map out the problem, and you figure out what's the most important to focus on. And you also, to cover everything, interview experts. That can come from that group, but also from external. On Tuesday, you get creative. You will first be inspired by so-called lightning demos, where everyone gives ideas on a certain topic, and then you start to sketch.
Before Wednesday. So is this done individually on Tuesday? or is it Jonathan
Tuesday,
Gray?
that's important. There's no brainstorming in the classic sense. It's a solo storming, and there's a very rigid way how you come into ideas. By the way, the 5 days are an emotional roller coaster, because there are phases where you think, oh my goodness, where does this lead to? Does this lead anywhere? Yeah, especially for everyone who is a classic consultant, where you're used to knowing at the beginning, the end. No way.
Yeah. I hear you, and I really like that you said in this Tuesday, because Tuesday is quite an important day. There's no judgment, there's no criticism. It is literally just each individual, right? Comes up with ideas.
And it's really, the methodology is really great to get this all aligned. And you have those, in order to you can say it's like a process like this.
Yeah, narrowing down.
And the dots, you have dots where you focus on and help you to focus on what you do next. And that's amazing. And on Wednesday, you go into what you have decided earlier on. You're going to sketch this. And that sketch will be the storyboard for the next day, which is doing the prototype.
Okay, so before we continue, for people who don't know, what do you mean by storyboard?
The storyboard, it's really that the best of the ideas who came up before are now turned into what do we want to show in the prototype? It sometimes can be a play.
That sounds fun.
That is not always a app or something. Yeah, that really depends. And by the way, you don't need, there are a lot of tools, prototyping tools, but you can do it with even if with PowerPoint. We're always talking about a facade. So what you do, you say a storyboard is, this comes first, this will be the intro for the test, then comes this, then comes this, then comes this.
Perfect. Okay, so it's a sequence of events. Okay, great.
Of what you should when. Yeah, and then on Thursday, day 4, you do the prototype and everyone has its role, and it's sometimes a really amazing experience how far you can get in such a short time.
Really?
And 1 or 2 people are dedicated to prepare the interview. The interview is day 5, where you interview 5 people, showing them the prototype, and the interview is with the open questions. And there's a funny side note. I learned that with 5 people and 5 patterns you get out of there, you cover 85% of what you would cover if you would do 50 or 500. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's if you're interviewing the direct end customer to get that insight.
Yeah. Whoever those 5, it's about the 5. You don't need 10, you don't need 20 to cover 85. So this is why it's so Pareto efficient.
I love it because it's 5 people on the 5th day of a 5-day sprint. I love the synergy. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And you did do it in 5 minutes. So well done. That's really wonderful. We do have a couple of minutes. So I just want your final takeaways and final thoughts, some low-hanging fruit that maybe they can take away and implement today.
Yeah. So if you have a big question, look at the Google Design Sprint. If you want something to launch, look at it as well.
It sounds like magic.
Yeah, if you're trapped in endless PowerPoints discussing what your customer really wants, I recommend doing the same. And if your company is stuck in, how you say, paralysis analysis, go for it. And by the way, it has a lot of great features when it comes to optimize meetings.
Okay. I'm with you. I mean, I worked in banking for 30 years, and PowerPoint is the bane of my existence. Even for consultants, I'm sure it's the same. So thank you very much for sharing relevant insights. A final personal note, what's your aspirational thought that they can take away? And then I'll close this up.
just try it out. Read the first chapter for the first day, and then take your takeaways for your next meeting.
Excellent. So it is an iterative process and it can keep going. That's amazing. Thank you so much. This is a great tool for our audience. If you are intrigued, but you don't know how to use it, then of course, look Micah up. The link will be underneath the video and the Spotify. Next week, we will be talking to our experts about the B2B metaverse and how you can utilize hybrid and digital to enhance digital customer experiences, which actually would fit a design sprint. And in the meantime, the audio will be shared on Spotify. The video will be shared on YouTube. Thank you so much, Micah, and we'll see you next week online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.